There are moments in professional wrestling that stop time. Moments where the entire arena goes silent for a split second before erupting into absolute chaos. Moments where even the most seasoned wrestling veterans look at each other with that look, you know, the one, that wide-eyed, jaw-on-the-floor expression that says, "I cannot believe what I just witnessed." Monday Night Raw has given us plenty of those moments over the decades. Championship changes in the middle of nowhere. Returns nobody saw coming. Legends walking through that curtain one last time. But what happened this past Monday? What unfolded on live television in front of thousands of screaming fans and millions watching at home? That was something different. That was something that felt less like a wrestling match and more like a reckoning. And at the center of it all, a man with no name. A man with no face. A man who walked through that curtain wearing a mask, and proceeded to do something that nobody in that building, nobody backstage, nobody watching from their couch saw coming. He didn't just beat Logan Paul. He destroyed him. Welcome back to Wrestling Impact. Buckle up, because this one is going to change everything. Now, before we get into the carnage, let's set the scene properly, because context is everything in professional wrestling, and if you want to truly feel the weight of what happened Monday night, you need to understand the world Logan Paul had built for himself inside that squared circle. Logan Paul walked into WWE as a spectacle. That's the honest truth. He came in with the social media followers, the boxing credentials, the charisma that fills a room before he even opens his mouth. And a lot of people expected him to be a flash in the pan. Another celebrity dabbling in the sport, taking up space that a hungry, hard-working wrestler could have used. But Logan Paul didn't just survive in WWE, he thrived. He learned the craft, he developed genuine ring psychology, and he leaned into his character with the kind of commitment that even the most hardened wrestling purists had to reluctantly respect. He became the United States champion. He made John Cena look like he was working for him during their interactions. He strutted around that ring with a confidence so overwhelming it almost became its own gravitational field. Logan Paul had built himself into a legitimate force in this industry, and going into this past Monday Night Raw, he was riding high. And that's what makes everything that happened so extraordinary. Because Logan Paul walked into the arena that night like he always does, sunglasses on, entourage in tow, that signature smirk plastered across his face like he already knew how the night was going to end. He had been cutting promos for weeks about how there was nobody on the Raw roster who could challenge him. Nobody. He stood in that ring and looked into the camera with those eyes that are equal parts charm and arrogance, and he said, and I'm paraphrasing here, that WWE was his kingdom now, and anyone who thought differently was welcome to come and take it from him. The crowd booed. They always boo Logan. But even the people booing him have a complicated relationship with his presence, because somewhere underneath that frustration is the grudging acknowledgement that this man can perform. Logan was mid-sentence during one of his promos, basking in that electric heat from the crowd, when the lights went out. Now, lights going out on Raw is not exactly a rare occurrence. It's a wrestling trope as old as time. The crowd started doing that collective murmur, half anticipation, half skepticism, because they've seen this movie before. But then something happened that nobody expected. The lights didn't come back immediately. They stayed off. And in that darkness, the arena filled with a sound. Not music exactly, more like a deep, resonating tone. Almost like a heartbeat being played through the world's largest speaker system. The kind of sound that doesn't just reach your ears, it moves through your chest. The crowd went from murmuring to completely, utterly silent. And then a single spotlight hit the entrance ramp. And there he was. No introduction. No graphic on the screen. No name announced by the ring announcer. Just a figure standing at the top of the ramp, completely still, wearing a mask that covered his entire face, dark, almost ceremonial in its design, the kind of mask that feels less like a costume and more like a statement. The crowd didn't know whether to cheer or boo or scream, so they did all three simultaneously, creating this wall of noise that sounded like the building itself was crying out. Logan Paul, to his credit, didn't flinch. He stood in the ring and stared up at this mysterious figure, and you could see him doing the mental calculus. Who is this? Is this a setup? Is this part of the show? And coming up empty. He took off his sunglasses slowly, which for Logan Paul is the equivalent of a gunfighter putting his hand on the holster. He pointed at the masked man and said, loud enough for the ringside microphones to catch it, asterisk, do you have any idea who I am? Asterisk. The masked man began walking to the ring. No rush. No sprint. No dramatic running entrance. Just a slow, deliberate walk, each step measured and purposeful, like a force of nature that doesn't need to hurry because it knows nothing can stop it. The crowd was losing their minds. People were standing on their feet not because they knew who this was but because they could feel in that instinctive, primal way that live wrestling audiences sometimes tap into that something significant was about to happen. The masked man climbed the ring steps. He stepped through the ropes. And he stood across from Logan Paul, close enough that they were almost face to face, and he said absolutely nothing. Logan pointed a finger directly at his chest. I've beaten everyone they've put in front of me. I don't know who you are, but I know how this ends. The masked man tilted his head slightly. And then he grabbed that pointed finger, bent it back just enough to make Logan grimace, released it, and stepped back to his corner. The referee looked at the announce table. The announce table looked at the production team. And this was the moment the crowd absolutely detonated. A referee came down the aisle with a championship contract in hand, and the ring announcer, in that perfectly theatrical WWE voice, said the following contest is scheduled for one fall, and it is for the WWE United States Championship. The place lost its mind. Because nobody knew this match was happening. It wasn't on the card. It wasn't advertised. It was completely spontaneous, or at least it was sold as completely spontaneous, and in the current era of wrestling where everything feels pre-packaged and predictable, genuine surprise is worth its weight in gold. Logan Paul called for the belt. He held it above his head with both hands, playing to the crowd with that trademark showmanship, and you could see him recalibrating. He was no longer confused or off balance. He was in performance mode. He was Logan Paul, WWE United States Champion, and this was his moment to perform. He'd overcome obstacles before. He'd proven doubters wrong before. Whoever this masked individual was, Logan Paul was going to make an example out of him. The bell rang, and from the opening seconds, something was clearly different. Logan Paul is not a passive wrestler. He doesn't start slow and build. He attacks. He's aggressive and athletic, and he uses his physical tools, that boxer's reflexes, that explosive speed, to establish control early. He came at the masked man with that energy, going for a quick grapple, looking to establish dominance right from the opening exchange. The masked man stopped him cold. Not just stopped him, redirected him. With a technical precision that had the commentators stammering to find words, the masked man countered Logan's initial assault and sent him into the corner with a force that shook the ring. Logan hit the turnbuckle hard, bounced off, and the masked man was already waiting. A clothesline that nearly took Logan's head clean off his shoulders sent him crashing to the mat, and the crowd erupted in a mixture of shock and savage delight. Logan rolled to the outside immediately. Smart move. He's been in enough matches to know when he needs to reset. He paced on the floor, rolling his neck, doing that boxer's bounce, looking back up at the masked man standing in the center of the ring, completely still, completely patient, not even gesturing for Logan to come back in. Just waiting. Logan slid back in. What followed next was, without exaggeration, one of the most physically compelling segments we have seen on Raw in recent memory. The masked man was operating at a level that defied easy categorization. He had the technical precision of someone who had spent years in the purest forms of mat wrestling. He had the power of a heavyweight. And he had something else, a kind of control fury, like every move was both perfectly choreographed and completely fueled by genuine intensity. Logan Paul is a gifted performer, and he was absolutely trying. He got his shots in. There was a beautiful Spanish fly attempt that the crowd reacted to enormously. He landed his signature punches, used that boxing background to create angles and openings that most wrestlers don't even think about. He hit a spectacular leap from the top rope to the outside that took out the masked man and had the live crowd on their feet chanting his name. Yes, chanting his name, because even people who despise Logan Paul appreciate a breathtaking athletic moment. But every time Logan seemed to build momentum, every time it felt like the champion was beginning to assert himself, the masked man found a way to shut it down. And not just shut it down, punish Logan for the attempt. Every near comeback was met with a response that was more devastating than what preceded it. It was almost tactical. Like the masked man was studying Logan in real time, identifying the patterns, and specifically targeting every strength Logan had. The psychology of this match was extraordinary. There was a moment roughly 12 minutes in where Logan had the masked man in a headlock on the mat and was really working it, leaning his full body weight into it, and you could see the arena holding its breath because this was real tension. The masked man's hands were on the mat and the referee was checking, is this a submission? Is the arm going to drop 3 times? And twice the arm fell. And the third time, the crowd in complete hysterical suspense, the masked man's fist came up and the building screamed. He powered to his feet with Logan still trying to maintain the hold, and with a burst of pure physicality, he drove Logan backward into the corner so hard that Logan's grip broke instantly. The masked man stepped back. He rolled his shoulders. He looked at Logan with those unreadable masked eyes. And Logan looked back, and for the first time all night, there was something in Logan Paul's expression that none of his fans or detractors had ever really seen before. He looked uncertain. Not scared. Logan Paul doesn't do scared, it's not in his programming. But uncertain. That precise, athletic confidence that defines everything Logan does in that ring had a crack in it, and the live crowd felt it the way wrestling crowds feel everything instantaneously and loudly. The final sequence of this match was the kind of thing that wrestling highlight packages will be built around for months. The masked man caught Logan Paul coming off the ropes, held him up in the air, just held him there, completely suspended, while the crowd counted along involuntarily and then delivered a slam of such seismic force that the ring mats rippled. Logan arched on impact, and his entourage at ringside looked at each other with the kind of concern that goes beyond performance. Then the masked man went to work with a sequence of strikes that the commentators couldn't keep up with, each one landing with a crack that echoed through the arena, driving Logan toward the corner, cutting off every escape route, systematically, methodically, beautifully dismantling the WWE United States Champion piece by piece. Logan tried one last desperate counter, a sunset flip that would have ended the match if he'd been able to hold it, but the masked man rolled through it, grabbed Logan's legs, and applied a submission hold that had Logan Paul screaming and reaching desperately for the ropes. He got to them at the last possible moment, the crowd half cheering his survival and half groaning that this wasn't over yet. But it almost was. The masked man pulled Logan back to the center. He set him up. The crowd was on their feet, every single person, a sold-out arena standing as one. He delivered his finishing maneuver, a combination of pure power and technical execution that folded Logan Paul in a way that looked devastating and probably felt worse, and covered him as the referee slid in. 1, 2, 3. The bell rang, and for a full 3 seconds, the arena was silent. That rare, precious, stunned silence that only the most seismic wrestling moments can produce. And then it erupted. An absolute wall of sound, the kind that makes the production team reach for the audio controls because it's genuinely almost too loud to broadcast. People were hugging strangers. People were pointing at the ring and looking at their friends like, "Are you seeing this?" The announce team was talking over each other in genuine excitement, trying to convey what had just happened to the people watching at home. There was a new WWE United States Champion, and nobody knew his name. The masked man stood in the ring, championship belt in his hands, and he held it up not with celebration, not with jumping around or playing to the crowd, but with a stillness that somehow felt more powerful than any victory celebration you've ever seen. He just held it up and looked out at the audience, and in that moment, the mystery became the story. Who is this man? Where did he come from? What does he want? Why now? Why Logan Paul? The questions hung in the air like electricity, and the WWE audience, a fanbase that sometimes convinces itself it's too smart to feel genuine wonder, was completely and totally enraptured. Logan Paul was being helped by his corner as the masked champion climbed each turnbuckle in turn, raising the championship to each section of the crowd. And the crowd, despite themselves, despite knowing nothing about this person, responded. Because wrestling is ultimately a story, and this was a story with a compelling new chapter, and nobody in that building wanted it to end. Backstage, we're told from reports coming from people inside the arena that night that the reaction was equally electric. Wrestlers were gathered around monitors. Veterans who've seen everything were standing up, watching. Conversations were happening in real time about who this could be, what this means for the Raw landscape, what direction this takes the United States Championship picture. Nobody apparently had been given full details in advance, which explains why the genuine reactions from the talent themselves were as authentic as the ones from the crowd. Logan Paul, once backstage, was seen not in a rage, not doing the theatrical villain stomp that you might expect, but quiet, reflective, walking with purpose toward whoever was responsible for booking this match, which tells you everything you need to know about how this will fuel the next chapter of this story. Logan Paul does not lose gracefully. Logan Paul does not accept defeat and move on. Logan Paul metabolizes loss and transforms it into motivation, and the version of Logan Paul that comes back from this experience is going to be a different animal entirely. And that is what great wrestling storytelling does. It doesn't just tell you what happened, it sets up what's coming. It plants seeds. It creates emotional investment in futures that haven't been written yet. Whoever is underneath that mask has not just won a championship, they have inserted themselves into one of the most compelling ongoing narratives in WWE today, and they have done it in a way that nobody can ignore. The questions are everywhere right now. The online wrestling community is working overtime. Every possible theory, Every possible identity, every possible motive is being discussed and debated and argued with the passion that only wrestling fans can bring to a conversation. Timelines are being cross-referenced. Body types are being analyzed. Voice patterns from that brief exchange are being run through mental databases. And the beautiful thing is nobody knows. As of the recording of this video, the masked man's identity has not been confirmed. And that ambiguity is the most powerful storytelling tool in professional wrestling. Because wrestling is at its best when it makes you feel something. When it takes you from where you are, your couch, your commute, wherever you watch this, and puts you inside that arena. When it makes your stomach drop and your heart race and your voice louder than you intended. When it reminds you why you fell in love with this art form in the first place, with all its complexity and spectacle and emotion and drama. Monday Night Raw gave us that this week. A masked man. A champion dethroned. A mystery that is just beginning to unfold. And we will be here every step of the way, breaking it down, following every development, giving you the depth and the detail and the passion that this story deserves. Because that's what we do here on Wrestling Impact. We don't just cover wrestling, we live it with you. If this video got your blood pumping even a fraction of how it got ours, hit that like button right now. It genuinely helps more wrestling fans find this channel, and this community grows every single time you do. If you want to be in the room when the masked man's identity drops, when Logan Paul makes his return, when this rivalry hits its next explosive chapter, subscribe and ring that bell, because we are not slowing down, and we want to hear from you. Who do you think is underneath that mask? Drop your theory in the comments right now. The best theory wins nothing but eternal bragging rights and our complete respect, which is honestly worth more. Until next time, this is Wrestling Impact and the story is just getting started.